my favorite sports weekends of the year, conference championship games. We've got 10 in all. There's a lot of focus on the Power Five, but what about the Group of Five? We go to our guy, Steve Helwick, who does work at SB Nation's Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt. He's going to break down all the matchups for us. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and this might be one of the most chaotic championship weekends yet. We have a whole regular season slate going on, games like Texas A&M, Tennessee, Iowa, Michigan just scattered throughout the day. We have a whole weekend of conference championship games. Currently, all 10 are scheduled. And then we have our first bowl game of the year in the middle of the day in the Frisco Bowl between UTSA and SMU. So it's just a chaotic Saturday of college football with a lot of teams playing on December 19th.
It is crazy. I love it, but it is crazy not to have the spotlight just strictly on the championship games and all these other regular season games. Some of them important, some of them not, but it's great to have college football. All right, Conference USA gets it started on Friday night with UAB taking on Marshall. And, of course, you addressed the Marshall loss, surprising, shocking loss to Rice a couple weeks ago. But they still have, of course, their shot to win the conference.
Yes, Marshall has had a week off ever since that Rice game, and the Thundering Herd are going to have to regroup, especially offensively. I don't think we're going to see as bad of a performance as Grant Wells had against Rice again, where he threw 5 interceptions, and it was just an off day for the offense. Now, UAB does present some challenges in the defense. The Blazers prefer to keep games lower scoring, like their game against Rice last weekend. And earlier this year, they played a very tough Louisiana team in a low-scoring game. I think the final score of that was 24-20. So the Blazers do have a lot of guys on defense, but keep in mind that they're going to enter this game with some opt-outs. Specifically, their star receivers opted out of the season. They're short scholarship players. They're going to play in Huntington, West Virginia, with maybe under 40 scholarship players in this game. So the Blazers are shorthanded. They were able to pull it off last Saturday while trailing at halftime against Rice, the same Rice that beat Marshall. But it's a whole different ball game, and I'm sure Doc Holliday's had this off week to prepare his guys and get that offense rolling again with star running back Brendan Knox and great freshman quarterback in Grant Wells, who just happened to have an off week in his last game.
So in sizing up these two teams, who do you give the lean to, and who do you like on Saturday?
I'm going to give the lean to Marshall. Marshall has not won a Conference USA title since 2014 with Rakeem Cato. They were also a one-loss team that year. UAB, this will be their third straight USA title game under Bill Clark, which is really impressive, all circumstances considered, with what the program did in the mid-2010s and taking a 2-year hiatus and then reviving. So that's amazing what UAB has been able to do. But I think Marshall prevents too much of a challenge defensively for UAB's offense. Marshall is the only team in the FBS to allow under 12 points a game. And even in their one loss this year, their defense did their job. Rice had a pick 6 in that game, and a lot of those points that they allowed were just due to turnovers setting up Rice in field goal range. So Marshall's defense has held firm all season long. They held App State to 7. They ran through most of their CUSA games in just low-scoring defensive bouts. And I think they can really take down this UAB offense here. Now, the game breaker, if UAB wins, it'll be because they had success with a deep ball. Tyler Johnston, their quarterback, who was hurt for a lot of the year, has played in their last 2 games, and he can sling it. He's not the most accurate always, but when he gets that deep ball in, the Blazers have had success. We saw that in the 2018 Boca Raton Bowl. We saw that last week when he had passes of 54 yards, 63 yards, and 42 yards downfield, just targeting that streak route over and over again. But I think the MVP of this game will be Marshall running back Brendan Knox, and Marshall gets back to its power running game and appends UAB to win the CUSA at 8-1.
Got Steve Helwick on the line from Underdog Dynasty and Hustle Belt on SB Nation to break down the Group of 5 conference championship games. And we stay with the one on Friday out of the MAC. I got to think that Ball State players, coaches, fans, alumni are still just calming down from the heart palpitations that they had late in the game with the Cal Stanford type scene at the end of that game. That was one of the craziest. And, I caught it first and foremost on your Twitter feed. And that was just tremendous. Anybody out there, if you've not seen it, just look up the end of the Ball State Western Michigan game, and you will not believe what ensued. But Ball State matches up against, of course, undefeated Buffalo and one of your favorite players, Jared Patterson.
Yes, that Ball State ending it might have even topped Stanford Cal there. You have 100 Ball State players on the field, their entire rosters on the field, and they realize that none of them can make a tackle. We actually have a precedent with that role in the 1954 Cotton Bowl, where Rice versus Alabama, where Rice was going down the field and Alabama player came off the sidelines and tackled. There is a rule that's not often used that if a player from the sidelines contributes and makes a tackle, that it is an automatic touchdown. So that play could have even gone even more sideways there. But Western Michigan was one forward lateral away from making the MAC title game. So just a chaotic finish. Yes, if you haven't seen that play, you have to see it. Just a crazy way for Ball State to clinch its first MAC championship game since 2008. And what a good comeback that was from the Cardinals. Last week I was on here, I was talking a lot about Ball State running back Caleb Huntley, but he opted out of the season. So Ball State really went through their air attack that game. And Justin Hall, he got a helmet sticker on ESPN's College Football Final this week. He had 175 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and he is a yards after the catch monster. I think if Ball State wants to upset Buffalo, it's going to have to come to Justin Hall just making plays in open field on Buffalo's cornerbacks. And then meanwhile, on the other hand, you have Buffalo with the best running back duo in the nation, maybe outside of North Carolina. I mean, they're both, it's take your pick. Buffalo, Jarrett Patterson had a down week, you could say, with just 105 rushing yards, but he didn't even play in the second half. So it was just typical Jarrett Patterson we were seeing, and his running mate, Kevin Marks, had 182 rushing yards to pile on that. Now, the Buffalo offensive line, if you watch them play, they are elite in the run blocking, and they're great in the pass blocking too. I think they've gone now 4 games last year and 5 games this year, 9 games in a row without allowing a sack. They're the only team in the country not to allow a sack this year. So pass rushes have been neutralized when against Buffalo. Now, Buffalo keeps things grounded a lot because they have such a good running game. Jarrett Patterson is probably the best running back in the country. Then you have Kevin Marks alongside him. So Kyle Van Treese, he only has to throw about 10 to 15 times a game. So expect Buffalo to keep it grounded for the most part unless they happen to have themselves playing from behind. But Ball State's really going to have to attack that air, and they're going to have to outscore the Bulls. This one is not going to be a defensive showdown, and I think the offense is reign superior in this one.
Well, I think I can read between the lines, but Steve, what's your selection on this one?
Buffalo's undefeated right now. They're ranked in the AP poll. I think this is the best MAC team since 2016 Western Michigan that went to the Cotton Bowl. They might even be better. They don't have as much balance as Western Michigan, but this Buffalo team, they win in the trenches, and that is where you can find your good teams, the ones that win on the offensive line, and then their defensive line. They have the best pass rusher in the MAC, Malcolm Kuntz, led the MAC in sacks last year. I think he's leading it in this year too, and he's going to be a problem for those Ball State quarterbacks, Drew Plitt this Saturday. So I think Ball State wins in the trenches both sides, and I'm going to say it'll be a high-scoring game. Let's see. It's the number 1 scoring offense in the country. They average over 50 a game. I'll say Buffalo gets 54, Ball State 28.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love. Best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. Please lock it in with a subscription. Hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. We got Steve Helwick on the line. You can join him on Hustle Belt, also on Underdog Dynasty on SB Nation. He's our go-to guy when it comes to the group of 5. Seems like it's been forever since we've seen Cincinnati on the field. They were supposed to have played Tulsa last week to finish up the regular season. They will take on the Golden Hurricane for the American Conference Championship game. And Cincinnati, of course, with a one semi-close call against a UCF, but dominating a difficult conference schedule. And we got the Bearcats taking on Tulsa. Your thoughts about this one?
Yes, it's been so long since we've seen Cincinnati, and they had Tulsa on the schedule 2 times this year, and they were both canceled. I think one of them was in October, and one of them was last week, and those games were supposed to be scheduled in Tulsa. So Cincinnati's really a huge benefit here of getting the game in Nippert Stadium, where they've won 19 straight games. I think the only teams in the country with a longer home winning streak are Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. So Cincinnati really benefits from, I think, having that game off against Tulsa. And now they get to play a Tulsa team that's ranked and probably would not have been ranked if they had played and if Cincy had won on the Plains earlier this year. Now, Cincinnati has a really good resume. They have just clocked most of their opponents. I think they have four wins against FBS teams of 28 or more points. And then they had that tough game against a really good UCF team, one of the best offenses in the country. And they were able to come out of that 36-33, played more of an offensive game in that. But the Bearcats present a really good defense, and there's no weakness. They have Majay Sanders on the defensive line, Jarrell White at the linebacker position, then Ahmad Gardner, Kobe Bryant at the cornerback positions, and they're just stacked all around defensively. And I think I'd put this unit against almost any offense in the country and expect them to thrive against it. And now Tulsa is the only other team in the American Conference that I'd consider to have an elite defense. Tulsa has the player who I think is the defensive player of the year and I know he's played only 7 games, but he might have the best defensive resume for a Heisman Trophy since Ndamukong Suh. Zaven Collins this year against Oklahoma State in that first game, he has 3 sacks. Then in a second game against UCF, he has an interception, he forces a safety, and he leads the team in tackles. And every week you're playing, how can you top that with Zaven Collins? And then he plays a ranked SMU team. Tulsa's down 24-7 in that game. Zaven Collins intercepts Shane Buechele, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, final play of the game, and wins that one. And then the next week, you're like, how can Zaven Collins top this? And then against Tulane, Tulsa comes back. They tie it on a Hail Mary, and in overtime, he gets a pick 6 and takes it to the house. This guy is 6'4" and 260 pounds, and it's amazing what he can do on a weekly basis. And he's just must-watch TV as a defensive player. And if Tulsa has good pieces around him, Jackson Player on the defensive line is an excellent pass rusher in the middle. And then on the cornerbacks, they have big cornerbacks, 6'3", 6'4" cornerbacks, Allie Green the fourth, and a Caleb Evans. And they're physical guys. They'll get called for holdings and pass interferences, but you will not see them lag off their coverage. They will blanket Cincinnati's receivers. That being said, I think Cincinnati might have the slight edge offensively because their offense has really started rolling ever since that South Florida game this year. Desmond Ritter's really improved from the quarterbacking position. I think he's been playing more to his strengths recently with some shorter screen passes and then just keeping his running lanes open on offense. So I do like Cincinnati to thrive in this one, but I think this is going to be another close, low-scoring game. A lot of good defensive teams are playing on this conference championship game weekend.
And finally, on Saturday night, a conference that is ruled by Boise State has a Cinderella story in San Jose State. The Spartans are still undefeated, taking on the Broncos with 1 loss.
Yes. How about San Jose State, a team that hadn't had a winning season since 2012? Brent Brennan in his 4th year at the helm. They're undefeated. I did not expect them to beat Nevada. They were down 20-7 at halftime in that game. Nevada was about to make it 23-7, but they missed a chip shot field goal, and San Jose State capitalized on special teams. They returned that kickoff in the second half for a touchdown, and in the second half, their running back, Tyler Nevins, who is now one of my favorite running backs in college football because he runs like a truck. It's like Eddie Lacy when he was in his prime with the Packers. He wants to go out there and just physically impose his will on every single defender. And he's had 2 games, I think, of 130, 140 yards in a row. So San Jose State has a really exciting running back to watch. Now, going to Boise State, they're a tough team to read because they have 1 loss, and it was a really bad loss to BYU this year. And they were missing a lot of guys in there. They were missing their starting quarterback, Hank Bachmeier. They were missing some guys offensively, their starting running back, their top receiver. So Boise State was really shorthanded in that game. But against their Mountain West teams this year, they fared pretty well. I wanted to see more against them in Laramie, Wyoming last weekend when they won 17-9. I mean, it was a solid defensive performance, but I really wanted to see more from Bachmeier and that offense than just 17 points going into that Mountain West championship game. But when I'm evaluating this game, I really like what I've seen from San Jose State this season. I think Nick Starkel's a good quarterback. He has a great set of weapons, a lot of tall receivers that are great at hauling in those jump balls in the end zone. You have Bailey Gaither, the wide receiver, and Derek Deese Jr., who had a touchdown last week at tight end. But I cannot pick against Boise for a Mountain West title game. This is a team that has so much stability in coaching. Brian Harson's been here. He's one of the best game planners in the country. And Boise State doesn't usually lose games like this. So I really like the Broncos going into this week. Even though they've had a limited sample size this year, they had a lot of games canceled. They're going into this game at 5-1. They had their San Jose State game canceled earlier this year, so they've already prepared for this team. They've already seen a lot of San Jose State on film. And I think Brian Harsin, that's what separates him from a lot of coaches in the nation, is he'll be able to capitalize on that with his guys and have them ready to go. And the game is a home game in Las Vegas because San Jose State and their county has health guidelines. So the game will be played at San Jose State's makeshift home stadium in Las Vegas this Saturday because 2020.
Yeah, the run that Boise State's gone on over the past close to 20 years is just remarkable, just in regards to winning percentage in conference championships. And this not necessarily a special season for Boise State, just what they do each and every year. On the contrary, San Jose State doing something that Steve mentions that they haven't done, just in winning a winning record since 2012, but fighting for a conference championship is pretty remarkable.